She spent 3 years planning to destroy Lee Min-Jae, the man who killed her father. Then she overheard 2 Russians plotting to blow him up. She could have walked away. Let fate deliver her revenge. Instead, she warned him. That choice pulled her into his world, his war, and a terrifying truth. He really isn't who she thought he was. Before we proceed, I want to share a moment of vulnerability with you. I write these stories alone, late at night, wondering if anyone's even out there. Wondering if I should keep going. The algorithm doesn't care about the hours I pour into crafting these characters, these moments that feel real. But I guess you do because you're still here. So if this story intrigues you, please subscribe. So I have a reason to write the next one. The parking garage smelled like concrete and exhaust, 3 levels beneath the glass tower that cut into Seoul's skyline like a blade. Lara pressed her phone to her ear, pretending to listen while her other hand stayed steady against the cold pillar. Her Russian was better than her pretense of not understanding it, and the 2 men 20 feet away had no idea she spoke their language fluently. Thursday, the shorter one said, his accent thick with Moscow winters. The device is set for Thursday morning, 7:15. He always arrives between 7 and 7:30. And the car? Black Mercedes, slot 42. The vehicle assigned to Lee Min-Jae himself. Lara's breath caught. She knew that name. Everyone in Seoul's financial district knew that name, even if they pretended not to. Lee Min-Jae owned half the waterfront through companies that didn't technically exist, and the other half through ones that did. Her father had died because of him, or so she'd believed for 3 years. The coincidence of being in this garage, in this moment, felt like fate offering her a choice of revenge. The men's footsteps faded. Lara waited 2 full minutes before moving, her heels clicking against concrete as she headed not for the exit, but for the building security office on the ground level. She kept her face angled away from cameras, muscle memory from years of careful invisibility. The security desk sat behind bulletproof glass, manned by a young guard who barely looked up from his phone. "I need to report something," Lara said in Korean, her accent American enough to mark her as foreign, but not enough to make her memorable. Anonymously. That got his attention. "There's a device in one of the vehicles on level 3. Black Mercedes, slot 42. I overheard 2 men discussing it. Thursday morning, 7:15. The guard stared at her. "This is serious. You'll need to make a statement." "I've made it. Check the car or don't, but I'm not getting involved beyond this." She turned before he could protest, walking fast but not running, her heart a drum against her ribs. She made it to the street before she heard the sirens. By Wednesday afternoon, the entire building had been evacuated. Bomb disposal units confirmed what Lara had reported, a sophisticated device wired beneath the driver's seat, timed precisely for Thursday morning. The news didn't report the target's name, but the building's ownership wasn't a secret to anyone who knew where to look. Lara watched the coverage from her small apartment in Itaewon, her laptop open to the financial databases she'd spent 3 years learning to infiltrate. She cross-referenced shell companies, traced money through layered accounts, built maps of connections that all led back to one name. Lee Min-Jae. The man who destroyed her father wasn't hard to research, though his face rarely appeared in photographs. 42 years old, educated at Oxford, returned to Seoul to consolidate his family's legitimate businesses while quietly absorbing their less legitimate ones. Her father had been a financial consultant, hired by what he'd thought was a clean investment firm. When the money laundering charges came, he'd been the only one arrested. He died in federal prison 18 months into a 15-year sentence, a heart attack the official report claimed, though Lara had never believed it. She'd learned Russian because the networks ran deep with Eastern European connections. She'd learned financial forensics because money left trails even when people didn't. And she'd come to Seoul because this was where the head of the snake lived. The knock on her door came at 8:43 on Wednesday night. "Miss Lara." The man who spoke was Korean, his English crisp, his suit expensive. 2 others flanked him, their jackets cut loose enough to hide weapons. We'd like you to come with us. I don't think so, Lara said, already knowing this was a fight she couldn't win with refusal. The building security footage from Monday evening shows you in proximity to the individuals who planted the device. We need to verify your statement. This can be voluntary or it can be complicated, but either way, you're coming. She grabbed her bag. Didn't argue. Arguing made you memorable, and she'd already made herself too visible. The car was German, bulletproof, and silent as a held breath. They drove south toward Gangnam, away from her neighborhood and into streets where money didn't shout but whispered. The building they took her to had no sign, just an address in brass numbers that caught the streetlight like a warning. Inside was all marble and recessed lighting, the kind of space designed to make you feel small. They brought her to a conference room on the 16th floor, windows overlooking the river, and told her to wait. She waited 27 minutes. When the door opened, she knew him immediately even though she'd only seen 3 photographs. Lee Min-Jae moved like someone who'd never had to prove himself through aggression, which meant he'd proven himself in worse ways. Tall for a Korean man, lean in the way of people who controlled their bodies as precisely as they controlled everything else. His suit was dark gray, no tie, and his eyes were the kind of black that didn't reflect light so much as absorb it. He didn't sit. Just stood across the table from her, studying her face like she was a contract he was considering whether to sign. You speak Russian, he said. Not a question. Yes. Fluently. Yes. He pulled out the chair opposite her then, sitting with the kind of controlled grace that made the simple motion look calculated. Lara Bart, 28 years old, degree in international finance from Boston University, minor in Slavic languages. You've been in Seoul for 14 months working as a freelance translator. No criminal record, no political affiliations, no apparent connection to any organization that would want me dead. He paused. Except your financial searches suggest you're very interested in shell companies, specifically ones connected to my business operations. Her stomach dropped, but she kept her face neutral. I research my potential clients. Due diligence. You've never approached me for work. I'm still researching. This time he did smile, and it was worse than his blank expression. You're either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish. I haven't decided which. Does it matter? Lara leaned forward slightly, just enough to shift the dynamic. You're alive because I spoke up. That should count for something. It counts for you being in this room instead of a worse one, Min-Jae said quietly. But it doesn't count for trust. You understand that, don't you? In my world, coincidence is just conspiracy that hasn't been proven yet. Then prove it. Investigate me. You'll find I'm exactly who I say I am. We already are. He stood, buttoning his jacket with precise fingers. Until we're satisfied, you'll remain under protective supervision. For your safety, you understand. That's not protection, that's detention. Call it what you like. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. When he looked back at her, there was something almost curious in his expression. The men you overheard, you could identify them? Yes. Then you're valuable, he said. Value keeps you breathing. Remember that. The door closed behind him with a sound like a vault ceiling. They moved her to a corporate apartment in Cheongdam, luxury, expensive. 2 bedrooms, and a security detail that changed shifts every 8 hours. She wasn't handcuffed, but she wasn't free either. The first 3 days, she tested boundaries. The guards were polite but immovable. She could order food, use the internet under monitored conditions, even go to the building's gym if she gave 2 hours' notice. What she couldn't do was leave, make phone calls without supervision, or access any of her research materials. On the 4th day, they brought her to Min-Jae's office. It occupied the top floor of the building where the bomb had been planted, reclaimed now that the security sweep had finished. His desk faced the window, which meant anyone sitting across from him had to look at him against the backdrop of sky, a power play so obvious it almost seemed unintentional. The Russians are communicating more frequently, he said without preamble. After the failed attempt, they're trying to re-establish contact through intermediaries. Some of these communications are in code, some are in Russian. My translator is competent, but not specialized. You'll review these transcripts and provide analysis. He slid a tablet across the desk. Lara picked it up, scrolling through messages that ranged from seemingly innocent business inquiries to thinly veiled threats. This one, she said, pointing to a message dated 2 days ago. The sender mentions the shipment from Vladivostok arriving on schedule. There's no shipment. Vladivostok is a person, probably a code name. And schedule means soon, within a week. Min-Jae's eyes sharpened. How do you know? Context patterns. The grammar structure is wrong for discussing actual cargo. And the follow-up message uses future tense where past tense would be natural if they were confirming an arrival. She looked up from the screen. Someone's coming to Seoul. Someone important enough to announce in coded language. He took the tablet back, studying the messages again. You're certain? 90%. That's not 100. 100% certainty doesn't exist in translation, Lara said. Language is interpretation, especially when people are trying to hide meaning. I can give you highly probable, not absolute. For a long moment he just looked at her, and she wondered what he saw. A useful tool, a potential threat, or something more complicated. You'll work here, he said finally. 3 hours each morning, reviewing communications. The rest of your time remains restricted until we finish verifying your background. And when you finish? Then we'll discuss what happens next. She should have left it there, but the question pushed past her better judgment. Why not just eliminate the uncertainty? You clearly have the means. Min-Jae stood, moving to the window with his hands in his pockets. The light caught the edge of his profile, sharp as broken glass. Because uncertainty that proves harmless is an asset. You saved my life, Miss Bart, whether intentionally or not. I don't waste assets. But I also don't trust them until they've earned it. How do I earn it? He turned to face her fully, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. By being exactly who you claim to be. No more, no less. Can you do that? The trap in the question was elegant. If she was hiding something, agreeing made her a liar. If she wasn't, agreeing made her vulnerable. Either way, he was studying her reaction like a chess player watching their opponent's hand hover over a piece. I can, she said, meeting his stare until the air between them felt charged with something that wasn't quite hostility and wasn't quite anything else. Good. He returned to his desk, already turning his attention to other papers, dismissing her without another word. But as she stood to leave, his voice stopped her at the door. Miss Bart. She looked back. The men from the garage, we identified them through other footage. Both were found dead yesterday in Incheon, execution style. His expression didn't change. You picked the right side, whether you knew it or not. The implication hung in the air like smoke. She'd inserted herself into a war, and wars didn't care about bystanders. The work became routine, which was its own kind of trap. Every morning at 9, they brought her to Min-Jae's office. Sometimes he was there, watching her work with that unnerving focus. Sometimes he wasn't, and she was left alone with the messages and her own thoughts. She was good at the translations, better than good. She caught nuances his other people missed, flagged inconsistencies, built profiles of the speakers based on word choice and syntax patterns. And slowly, carefully, she began to notice other things. Financial reports left on his desk while she worked. Transaction records that didn't quite align with the timelines in the communications. Shell companies with formation dates that predated events they were supposedly created to handle. She said nothing, just observed, filing details away in the careful architecture of memory she'd built over 3 years of planning. It was during the 3rd week that she found the first real discrepancy. This authorization, she said, interrupting Min-Jae's phone call in rapid Korean. He held up one finger, finished his sentence, and hung up. Yes, the wire transfer to the Bratislava account, approved 3 years ago. The signature is yours, according to the metadata. And the timestamp says it was processed at 2:14 a.m. Seoul time on November 9th. But you were in London that week for the financial summit, which means it would have been 6:14 p.m. London time the day before, and according to the security logs I saw filed on your desk yesterday, you were at a dinner meeting until 11 p.m. The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. Min-Jae stood slowly, moving around the desk to where she sat. He didn't touch her, but he stood close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. You're reading documents that aren't part of your assignment. They're visible while I work. I have eyes. You have more than eyes, he said quietly, dangerously. You have intention. What are you really doing here, Miss Bart? Her heart hammered, but she didn't look away. My job. You asked for analysis, I'm giving it to you. If there are irregularities in your records, that's not my fault. But it is your observation, which means either you're remarkably astute or you're looking for specific inconsistencies. He leaned down, hands braced on the arms of her chair, caging her without touching. Which is it? This close she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, could see the exact shade of brown in his eyes that masqueraded as black. The air felt thin, like they were at altitude instead of in an office overlooking the city. Maybe both, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Maybe I'm astute enough to notice when someone's being set up. Someone like who? Someone like you. The words hung between them, reckless and true. His eyes searched hers, looking for the lie, for the angle, for whatever explanation made sense of this woman who'd appeared in his life at the exact moment someone tried to kill him. Why would you care if I'm being set up? His voice had dropped lower, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with affection and everything to do with danger. Because if you are, then my father might have been too. The confession escaped before she could stop it, and she watched realization move across his face like sunrise, slow and inevitable. He straightened, putting distance between them that felt both like relief and loss. Your father. David Bart. Financial consultant, arrested 3 years ago for laundering money through your European operations. He died in prison. Her hands clenched in her lap. You remember him? No. The answer was flat, immediate. I've never heard that name. Liar. I don't lie about things that are verifiable. Min-Jae moved back to his desk, but instead of sitting, he pulled up files on his computer, fingers moving across keys with precise speed. David Bart, arrested November 10, 3 years ago. Your authorities claimed he processed illegal transfers through accounts connected to my holdings. I wasn't questioned, never charged, because the evidence trail stopped at his level. He turned the screen toward her. I had my people review the case when your background check flagged the connection. The transfers he was convicted for, I never authorized them. Then who did? That, Min-Jae said, is what I'm beginning to wonder. He pulled up another file, then another, building a timeline on the screen between them. Authorization codes that didn't match his signature patterns. Transfers processed during times he could prove he was elsewhere. A pattern of activity that benefited the organization, but didn't originate from its head. Someone inside your operation, Lara said, her mind racing through implications. Someone close enough to use my credentials convincingly. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Someone who's been doing it for years. The bomb wasn't about Russian politics, Min-Jae finished. It was about removing me before I found this. They stared at the screen, the truth assembling itself between them like broken glass forming into a mirror. You came here for revenge, he said after a long moment. Yes. Against the wrong person. Maybe. She met his eyes. Or maybe against the right person for the wrong reasons. Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. You're either the most dangerous thing that's happened to me, or the only honest one. I haven't decided which. You keep saying that, Lara said. When will you decide? When you stop being useful and start being trustworthy, or vice versa. He closed the files, but she'd already memorized the details. Until then, you stay close. Not as a prisoner anymore. Then what? He considered her with those dark eyes that gave away nothing and everything. As someone whose interests temporarily align with mine. My enemy's enemy, if you prefer philosophy to pragmatism. And if my enemy is in your organization? Then we have the same enemy, Min-Jae said. Which makes you either my greatest asset or my perfect trap. Time will tell which. You really trust no one, do you? His smile was cold and beautiful. Trust is what people who can afford mistakes indulge in. I can't afford mistakes, Miss Bart. And after today, neither can you. They moved her again, this time to a building Min-Jae owned in Hanam, closer to his own residence and farther from his business offices. The apartment was smaller, but more secure, windows that didn't open and doors that required biometric access. She was being protected now, not detained, though the practical difference was minimal. But her access expanded. Files she hadn't been allowed to see appeared on the secure tablet they gave her. Financial records going back 5 years, communication logs, organizational charts that showed the architecture of Min-Jae's empire in detailed hierarchy. At the top sat Min-Jae himself. One level below, 3 names. The one that appeared most frequently in the recent communications was Kang Ji-hoon, his right-hand man for the past 8 years. She began building a profile, cross-referencing every mention of his name against timestamps and locations. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Transfers that happened when Min-Jae was traveling. Authorizations processed during his confirmed absences. A ghost using his credentials so precisely that it had to be someone with intimate knowledge of his schedule. Ji-hoon has been with me since I took over from my father, Min-Jae said when she presented her findings 3 days later. They were in his apartment this time, not his office, a sprawling space of minimalist furniture and art that probably cost more than the buildings it hung in. You're suggesting 8 years of loyalty is fabrication. I'm suggesting 8 years is enough time to build both loyalty and resentment, Lara corrected. She stood, looking out at the city lights that made Seoul look like fallen stars. What happened 8 years ago, when you took over? My father stepped down due to health issues. I consolidated operations, restructured leadership, eliminated redundancies. Eliminated people? Eliminated inefficiencies, Min-Jae said. Some of those were people, yes. And Ji-hoon's position? He was elevated from regional management to executive level. I trusted him with expansion into Eastern European markets. Lara turned to face him. So you gave him access, authority, and motive. If he resented being elevated instead of chosen as successor, if he built resentments over years of taking orders from someone younger, if he saw opportunity in the Russian connections you gave him to manage. That's speculation. It's pattern recognition. She moved closer, pulled by the magnetic field of his attention. Every discrepancy, every irregularity, they all trace back to the Eastern European operations. The same operations Ji-hoon manages. The same networks the Russian assassins came through. You don't believe in coincidence. You said that yourself. Min-Jae watched her with an expression she couldn't read. If you're right, I've been compromised for years. My organization has been undermined from the inside while I was looking outward at competitors. If I'm right, you're still alive to fix it. And if you're wrong? Then I'm wrong and Ji-hoon is loyal, and we look elsewhere. She stopped a few feet from him, close enough to see the calculation in his eyes. But I'm not wrong. You know I'm not. What I know, he said quietly, is that you appeared in my life at a very convenient moment with very convenient skills and a very convenient motivation. What I know is that this could be an elaborate play to turn me against my own people. Then test it, Lara challenged. Set a trap. Feed Ji-hoon information and see where it goes. You're good at traps, aren't you? His eyes narrowed slightly. You're very comfortable giving orders to someone who could have you killed with a phone call. You won't kill me. Why not? Because I'm useful, remember? She smiled without warmth. And because part of you is starting to believe I'm right. The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Min-Jae moved then, closing the distance until they were close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, close enough that the air felt charged with electricity that had nothing to do with anger. You're dangerous, he said softly. So are you. I mean it, Miss Bart. You're either going to save me or destroy me, and I don't know which yet. Her breath caught. Does it have to be one or the other? In my world? Yes. His hand came up, and for a moment she thought he might touch her face, but he just reached past her to the window control, darkening the glass until the city disappeared and left them in reflection. Everything is zero-sum. Win or lose. Live or die. Trust or eliminate. That sounds exhausting. It's survival. It's paranoia. His laugh was low and bitter. Paranoia is just pattern recognition applied to people. And people, Miss Bart, are the most dangerous patterns of all. She should step back, re-establish distance, but something kept her frozen in his orbit. What pattern am I? That's what I'm trying to determine. His eyes searched hers. Revenge, justice, survival, manipulation. You could be any of those, or all of them layered together so cleverly I can't separate the threads. Maybe I'm just someone trying to find the truth. Truth, he repeated, like the word was foreign. Truth is a luxury for people who can afford to believe in objective reality. In my world, truth is just the most convincing version of events. Then convince me, Lara said. Show me your version. Let me help you find out if Ji-hoon is betraying you. And if we find out he is, then we make him pay for it. The words came out harder than she intended, edged with 3 years of grief. Him, and everyone else who uses people as collateral damage for their ambitions. Something flickered in Min-Jae's expression, recognition maybe, or understanding. Your father. My father died alone in a cell for crimes someone else committed. If Ji-hoon used your credentials, if he authorized those transfers and let my father take the fall. She stopped, forcing her breathing to steady. Then yes, I want him to pay for it. Revenge. Justice. They're often the same thing, just with different paperwork. Min-Jae stepped back finally, breaking the moment. We'll test your theory. But carefully, because if you're wrong or if you're playing me, there won't be a second chance to explain. I understand. Do you? He turned away, moving to the bar cart against the wall and pouring 2 fingers of whiskey into a crystal glass. He didn't offer her one. Once we start this, there's no neutral ground. You're either with me or against me, and if I find out you're against me, you'll kill me, Lara finished. You've established that threat already. It's losing effectiveness through repetition. His smile was sharp as a knife. Who says it's a threat? Maybe it's a promise. Or maybe, he said, taking a slow sip, it's the only thing keeping both of us honest. The weight of his words settled over her like snow, cold and inescapable. She'd come to Seoul to destroy the man who destroyed her father. Instead, she'd found a conspiracy deeper than she'd imagined, and an enemy who might actually be an ally wearing the same dangerous face. What's the next step? She asked. Min-Jae set down his glass with a soft click of crystal on wood. Now we see how deep the rot goes. And we find out if trust is something either of us can afford. Or, his eyes met hers across the dim room, dark and fathomless. Or we both go down trying. The trap they set was elegant in its simplicity. Min-Jae fed Ji-hoon false information about a new Russian contact willing to facilitate weapons transfers through Busan, complete with fabricated financial projections and a timeline that required immediate action. Then they waited. Lara watched from Min-Jae's private office as he made the call, his voice betraying nothing but casual confidence. I need you to handle this personally, he told Ji-hoon. The margins are too good to risk with secondary contacts. Through the speaker, Ji-hoon's voice was smooth as oil. Of course. I'll arrange a meeting for next week. Sooner, Min-Jae said. They're talking to other buyers. We move now or we lose the opportunity. A pause, brief enough to be nothing or everything. I'll make it happen. The call ended. Min-Jae set down his phone with careful precision, and Lara watched his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. He'll reach out to his Russian contacts within the hour, she said. If he's dirty, he can't resist this. The opportunity is too perfect, and he'll want to control both sides of the deal. And if he doesn't? Then I'm wrong, and you have a loyal second who's simply doing his job. Min-Jae turned to face her, backlit by the wall of windows that made him look like a silhouette cut from the city itself. You don't believe that? No, Lara admitted. I don't. They monitored the communication channels in silence, the air thick with anticipation. 37 minutes later, an encrypted message pinged through the system. flagged by the monitoring software Min-Jae had quietly installed on Ji-hoon's devices 3 days ago. The message was in Russian, sent to a number that traced back to a burner phone in Vladivostok. Lara translated aloud, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. New opportunity. Lee is eager, which means vulnerable. Timeline accelerated. Recommend we consolidate position before proceeding with primary objective. Primary objective. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Min-Jae's expression didn't change, but something in his stillness became more dangerous. What else? She scrolled through the response that came 2 minutes later. They're asking about his readiness to assume full control. They want assurances that the transition will be clean. Her eyes met his. They're planning to remove you and install him as the new head. How long has this been going on? Lara pulled up the message history they'd recovered, timestamps going back months. Serious planning, about 6 months. But preliminary contact, maybe 2 years. He's been building this relationship long enough to make himself indispensable to them. While I was trusting him with expansion. Min-Jae's voice was quiet, controlled, which somehow made it more frightening. While I was giving him access to every financial channel, every contact, every weakness in our operation. He's been using that access to build his own power base, Lara said, pulling up another file. Look at this. 3 of your regional captains have been reassigned in the past 4 months, all replaced with men who have previous connections to Ji-hoon. The financial streams for the Eastern European operations, they've been gradually redirected through accounts he controls exclusively. Min-Jae studied the evidence with the focus of a surgeon examining a tumor. He's been preparing to cut me out of my own organization. Not cut you out, Lara corrected softly. Cut you down. The bomb wasn't a Russian initiative. It was Ji-hoon's solution, disguised as external threat. The silence that followed was absolute. Min-Jae stood so still he could have been carved from stone, and Lara found herself watching him with something between fascination and fear. This was a man confronting betrayal from someone he'd trusted for 8 years, and the fact that his rage was cold instead of hot made it infinitely more terrifying. He dies, Min-Jae said finally, his voice empty of inflection. But not quickly. Not until I understand the full scope of what he's built. If you move against him directly, he'll activate whatever contingencies he has in place, Lara warned. He's had 2 years to prepare. He'll have insurance, leverage, escape routes. Then we don't move directly. Min-Jae turned to her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. We dismantle him piece by piece until he has nowhere to run and no one to run to. Can you help me do that? The question was layered with meaning. He was asking about her skills, yes, but also her commitment, her willingness to cross lines that couldn't be uncrossed. Yes, Lara said, surprised by how much she meant it. But I need full access. Everything in your system, every file, every record. If we're going to find all the threads, I need to see the whole tapestry. That's a lot of trust to ask for. You're asking me to help you destroy your second in command. Trust seems like the minimum requirement. His smile was sharp and cold. You're learning how this works. That's either reassuring or terrifying. It can be both, she said, holding his gaze. Most dangerous things are. Something shifted in the air between them, recognition of a truth neither wanted to name. They were 2 people bound by mutual need and mutual suspicion, circling each other like wolves trying to decide whether to fight or hunt together. Min-Jae moved closer, and Lara's pulse jumped. He didn't touch her, but he stood near enough that she could see the fine grain of his shirt, smell the clean scent of his cologne mixed with something darker underneath. If you betray me, he said quietly, there won't be anywhere in the world far enough to hide. I know. And if I'm wrong about you, if you're playing a game I can't see yet, I'll make sure you regret every choice that brought you to Seoul. Lara lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Are you trying to scare me or test me? Both, Min-Jae said. Always both. That's the only way to survive people who are clever enough to be dangerous. Then let me be clear, she said, her voice low and steady. I came here hating you. I spent 3 years planning how to destroy you. And now I'm standing in your office offering to help you, which means either I'm the best liar you've ever met or something changed. You decide which is more likely. His eyes searched hers, looking for the crack in her armor, the tell that would give away deception. What changed? The enemy, Lara said simply. I thought you killed my father. Now I think Ji-hoon did, using your name like a weapon. So yes, I want him destroyed. And yes, I'll help you do it. Not because I trust you, but because right now we want the same thing. Revenge. Justice, she corrected. There's a difference. Not really, Min-Jae said. Justice is just revenge with paperwork and moral superiority. At the end, someone still bleeds. Then, let's make sure it's the right someone. For a long moment they stood locked in mutual assessment, two people who should have been enemies finding themselves reluctant allies. Then Min-Jae stepped back, breaking the tension like a held breath released. You'll have your access, he said. But you work from here, where I can monitor everything you see. And Lara, he added, using her first name for the first time without the formal miss, don't make me regret this. I could say the same to you. His smile was dangerous and beautiful. You already should. For 2 weeks they worked in careful parallel, building a case against Ji-hoon that was simultaneously a map of his betrayal and a strategy for his destruction. Lara traced money through layered accounts, finding patterns of theft disguised as legitimate expenses. Min-Jae verified independently, cross-referencing her findings against operational records only he could access. The picture that emerged was damning. Ji-hoon had been systematically weakening Min-Jae's position for nearly 3 years, skimming profits while increasing the organization's dependence on Russian partnerships he controlled. Every financial decision had been designed to make Min-Jae's operation vulnerable to external pressure, setting up a scenario where the Russians could force him out and install their chosen replacement. He's been patient, Lara said late one night, the office dark except for the glow of their screens and the city lights beyond the windows. Most people get greedy, move too fast. But he played the long game. He learned from me, Min-Jae said, his voice carrying an edge of bitter admiration. I taught him to think strategically, to sacrifice short-term gains for long-term position. I made him dangerous enough to threaten me. You couldn't have known. I should have. He stood, moving to the window with the restless energy of a predator caged too long. 8 years, and I never saw it. What does that say about my judgment? Lara saved her work and joined him at the window, standing close enough to see their reflections ghost-like in the glass. It says you're human. People want to believe in loyalty, especially from people they've elevated. That's not weakness, that's just the price of having people close enough to matter. In my world, that price gets you killed. But you're not dead, she pointed out. Because I happened to be in a parking garage at the right time, speaking the right language. Maybe that's not luck. Maybe that's the universe balancing the scales. He turned to look at her, and in the dim light his expression was unreadable. You believe in the universe balancing scales? I believe in patterns, Lara said. And the pattern says you were supposed to survive this. We just have to figure out why. So you can finish what the bomb didn't? The question should have been accusatory, but it came out almost curious, like he was genuinely wondering if she still wanted him dead. No, she said quietly. So I can understand what my father died for. If Ji-hoon used your credentials to authorize those transfers, if he set up my father as the fall guy to cover his own theft, then this isn't about you anymore. It's about the truth. Truth, Min-Jae repeated, like the word was foreign. You keep coming back to that. As if truth matters more than survival. Maybe it does. Then you're more naive than I thought. Or maybe you're more cynical than you need to be, Lara countered. She turned to face him fully, close enough to see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the tension in his jaw. Not everything is a power play. Sometimes things are exactly what they appear to be. Nothing is ever exactly what it appears to be, Min-Jae said. Especially not you. What do you think I am? His eyes held hers, dark and fathomless. I think you're the most dangerous kind of person. The kind who believes in something more than survival. That's not dangerous, that's just human. In my world, they're the same thing. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face with fingers that were surprisingly gentle. "You don't belong here, Lara. In this life, this world. You're going to get yourself killed believing in justice and truth and all the pretty lies people tell themselves to sleep at night." Her breath caught at the unexpected touch, at the proximity and the intimacy of the gesture. "Maybe. Or maybe I'll survive long enough to prove you wrong." "I hope you do," he said, and the rawness in his voice surprised them both. "I genuinely hope you do, because if you don't, it means this world wins. And I'm tired of watching it win." The confession hung between them, vulnerable and true. For a moment, Lara saw past the armor of calculation and control to something human underneath, something that remembered what it felt like to want things to be different. Then his phone buzzed, shattering the moment like dropped glass. Min-Jae stepped back, checking the message with practiced efficiency. His expression hardened. "Ji-hoon wants to meet. Says he has urgent information about the Russian contacts." "It's a move," Lara said immediately, her mind shifting back to strategy. "He's either discovered we're investigating him, or he's preparing to accelerate his timeline. Either way, it means we're running out of time." Min-Jae's fingers moved across his phone, typing a response. "I'll meet him tomorrow night. Neutral location, public enough to prevent immediate violence." He could still try something. Let him try. The cold certainty in Min-Jae's voice was absolute. "I want him to show his hand. The more desperate he gets, the more mistakes he makes. And if one of those mistakes kills you?" He looked up from his phone, something almost like warmth in his eyes. "Then I suppose you'll have to decide whether to avenge me or celebrate." "That's not funny." "It's not meant to be," Min-Jae said. "It's meant to be honest. We're walking into Endgame now, and in Endgame, people die. I need to know that if I'm one of them, you'll finish what we started." The weight of what he was asking settled over her like snow. He was trusting her not just with information, but with legacy, with the assumption that she cared enough about the truth to pursue it even if he wasn't there to see it. "I will," Lara promised. "But you're not going to die. We've come too far for that." His smile was brief and sharp. "Careful. You're starting to sound like you care whether I survive." "Maybe I do," she admitted. "You're growing on me. Like mold or a chronic condition." Min-Jae's laugh was unexpected, genuine, and it transformed his face into something younger and less burdened. "That's the most honest thing you've said to me." "Then let's keep being honest," Lara said. "What's the real plan for tomorrow?" The humor faded from his expression, replaced by the cold calculation she'd come to recognize as his natural state. "The real plan is to record everything he says, document every threat, every admission, and then to start the process of cutting him off from every resource, every contact, every piece of leverage he's built." "You're going to isolate him." "Completely," Min-Jae confirmed. "In this world, isolation is death. Once his Russian contacts realize he can't deliver what he's promised, once his people understand he's lost my protection, he becomes a liability. And liabilities get eliminated. By you. By the system," Min-Jae said. "I won't have to pull the trigger. I just have to remove the shields keeping other people from pulling theirs." It was brutal and efficient and terrifying in its cold logic. Lara should have been repulsed, but instead she found herself grimly satisfied. This was justice, maybe not the kind served in courtrooms, but the kind that actually worked in the world Min-Jae inhabited. "I want to be there," she said. "At the meeting?" "Absolutely not. He knows who I am by now, or he will soon. My background check went through your organization, which means it went through systems he has access to. If he's done even basic research, he knows about my father." Min-Jae's expression darkened. "Which makes you a target." "Or a asset," Lara countered. "If he knows about my father, he might think I'm working against you. He might try to recruit me, to turn me into a weapon against you. And if he does, we'll have him on record attempting to conspire against you with a witness present. It's too dangerous." "Everything about this is dangerous," she said. "But I didn't come this far to hide while you face the person who destroyed my father. I need to see his face when he realizes we know. I need that." Min-Jae studied her for a long moment, and she could see him calculating risks and benefits, weighing her emotional need against tactical advantage. "If you're there, you follow my lead completely," he said finally. "No improvisation, no confrontation until I give you the signal. Can you do that?" "Yes. I mean it, Lara. He's dangerous, and if he realizes we're onto him before I'm ready, people die. Maybe you, maybe me, maybe both of us. Control your anger or you'll get us killed." She met his eyes, letting him see the steel underneath her determination. "I've spent 3 years controlling my anger. I can manage one more night." "I hope so," Min-Jae said. "Because if this goes wrong, there's no second chance for either of us." The meeting was set for a restaurant in Itaewon, expensive enough to be exclusive, but public enough to discourage overt violence. Lara dressed carefully, professional but unmemorable, her hair pulled back and minimal jewelry. She was supposed to be a translator, nothing more, brought along to handle any Russian communications that might arise. Min-Jae arrived separately, his security detail visible but not intrusive. When Lara entered 5 minutes after him, he barely glanced at her, the perfect performance of employer and employee. Ji-hoon was already seated, and seeing him in person sent ice through Lara's veins. He was handsome in a polished way, mid-40s, with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. When those eyes landed on her, she saw recognition flicker across his face. He knew. "You brought company," Ji-hoon said in Korean, his tone carefully neutral. "Miss Bart is handling Russian translations," Min-Jae replied smoothly. "Given the sensitivity of our current negotiations, I thought it prudent to have our own interpreter rather than relying on intermediaries." "Of course." Ji-hoon's smile was pleasant and cold. "Though I wasn't aware we were expecting Russian communications tonight." "We should always be prepared," Min-Jae said. "You taught me that." The conversation continued in careful circles, Ji-hoon reporting on meetings that may or may not have happened, Russian contacts who were either real or fabricated. Lara took notes, her recorder running in her purse, capturing every word. Then Ji-hoon shifted topics. "I've been reviewing our financial records," he said casually, "and I noticed some discrepancies in the European accounts from 3 years ago. Around the time of that American scandal, the consultant who was arrested for laundering." Lara's pen stopped moving. "What about it?" Min-Jae's tone was bored, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Just curious if we ever followed up on the investigation." The man claimed he was following authorization from our organization, but he was the only one charged. Ji-hoon's eyes slid to Lara. "David Bart, I believe his name was." "Interesting coincidence, sharing a surname with your translator." The trap was sprung with surgical precision. Lara felt Min-Jae's attention on her, felt the weight of the moment crystallizing into decision. "Not a coincidence," she said quietly, looking up from her notes to meet Ji-hoon's eyes. "He was my father." Ji-hoon's expression didn't change, but something predatory entered his posture. "I see. And you're working for the organization you believe killed him. That's either remarkably forgiving or remarkably calculating." "Maybe I'm looking for the truth," Lara said. "About who really authorized those transfers." "The truth." Ji-hoon smiled. "The truth is your father was a thief who got caught. Whatever story you've constructed to make him innocent, it's just grief talking." "Is it?" She pulled out her tablet, turning it to face him. On the screen was the authorization record, timestamp highlighted. "Because the truth is this transfer was processed at 2:14 a.m. Seoul time, when the person whose credentials were used was provably on another continent. The truth is someone with access to executive codes used them to run illegal money through accounts my father managed, then let him take the fall. The truth is whoever did that has been doing it for years." The silence that followed was deafening. Ji-hoon's eyes moved from the tablet to Min-Jae, and Lara watched realization and calculation war across his features. "You've been investigating me," he said flatly. "I've been investigating discrepancies," Min-Jae corrected, his voice calm as a lake before a storm. "You just happen to be at the center of all of them." Ji-hoon's pleasant mask cracked. "You think you can move against me? I've built relationships, established dependencies. Half your European operation runs through contacts I control." Contacts you've been using to undermine me, Min-Jae said. The Russian partnership you've been so eager to expand, it's not for the organization's benefit. It's to create leverage. Make me dependent on networks you control until you can force me out entirely. You're paranoid. I'm informed, Min-Jae corrected. He pulled out his own phone, turning it to show message transcripts. Your communications with Vladivostok. Your discussions about primary objectives and transition planning. You've been building a coup for 2 years, using my resources to fund my own replacement. Ji-hoon stared at the evidence, his expression hardening into something ugly. And what do you plan to do about it? Kill me here? In public? I don't plan to do anything, Min-Jae said quietly. I've already done it. As of this morning, your access to all organizational accounts has been frozen. The captains you placed, they've been reassigned. Your Russian contacts have been informed that you no longer speak with organizational authority. You're isolated, Ji-hoon. Completely. The color drained from Ji-hoon's face. You can't. I already have, Min-Jae said. And now everyone in our world knows you tried to betray me, which means you're not just unemployed. You're a liability. How long do you think the Russians will let you live once they realize you can't deliver what you promised? Ji-hoon's hands clenched on the table. This is because of her, he spat, glaring at Lara. She poisoned you against me, filled your head with conspiracy theories about her criminal father. She showed me patterns I was too trusting to see, Min-Jae corrected. My mistake was believing loyalty lasted longer than opportunity. Yours was thinking I wouldn't notice when opportunity became betrayal. I built half your empire. And you stole from it the entire time, Min-Jae said. We're done here. You have 48 hours to leave Seoul. After that, I stop protecting you from the consequences of your choices. Ji-hoon stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over. Yes, Min-Jae said with cold finality, it is. They watched Ji-hoon leave, his exit stiff with barely contained rage. Only when he was gone did Lara allow herself to breathe fully. He'll run, she said. He'll try, Min-Jae agreed. But I've already informed the relevant parties about his betrayal. He won't make it to the airport. The casual certainty in his voice sent a chill through her. You're going to have him killed. I'm going to stop protecting him, Min-Jae corrected. There's a difference. I won't pull the trigger, but I won't stop the people who will. In this world, that's mercy. Lara should have protested, should have argued for actual justice, for courts and trials. But she thought of her father dying alone in a cell for crimes this man had committed, and she found she couldn't summon the outrage. What about the evidence? She asked instead. Against my father? We'll compile everything we found, create a timeline that shows the transfers originated from someone with stolen credentials. Your father's lawyer can file for posthumous exoneration. Min-Jae's expression softened slightly. It won't bring him back, but it will clear his name. Thank you. The words felt inadequate for what he was offering, but they were all she had. Don't thank me yet, Min-Jae said. This kind of evidence will raise questions about my organization. Your father's case will be reopened, which means investigators will look closely at every transaction, every connection. Some of that scrutiny will fall on me. Will you survive it? His smile was brief and sharp. I always do. The question is whether you will. What do you mean? I mean you're about to be very visible, Min-Jae said. David Bart's daughter, the woman who proved his innocence, who worked with the organization that was used to frame him. The media will love that story. You'll be exposed, examined, questioned about everything you did to get here. Lara hadn't thought that far ahead, too focused on the immediate goal of destroying Ji-hoon. But Min-Jae was right. Once this became public, her life, as she'd known it, was over. I can protect you, Min-Jae continued, his voice low and serious. Keep you inside the organization, give you a position that comes with security and resources. You've proven yourself valuable, and I don't waste valuable assets. Is that what I am? An asset? His eyes held hers across the table, dark and unreadable. You're whatever you choose to be. But if you stay, if you accept my protection, then you become part of this world completely. There's no going back to normal life after that. And if I leave? Then you leave, Min-Jae said simply. With my gratitude and my assurance that no harm will come to you from my organization. You walk away, rebuild your life somewhere else, and we part as allies who served a mutual purpose. The choice he was offering was real, she could see that. He would let her go if she chose, no strings or threats. But staying meant entering his world fully, becoming part of the machinery she'd once wanted to destroy. I need time to think, Lara said. You have until we finish cleaning up this mess, Min-Jae said. After that, you choose. Stay or go, but choose deliberately. Ji-hoon's body was found 3 days later in an Incheon warehouse, the victim of what the news called a gang-related execution. The police investigation was brief and inconclusive. No one was particularly motivated to solve the murder of a known criminal figure. Min-Jae didn't comment on it, but Lara saw the way tension bled from his shoulders, the way his attention shifted from defensive to strategic. The threat was eliminated, the organization secured. He was free. The evidence against her father was compiled into a comprehensive brief and submitted to both American federal investigators and media outlets sympathetic to wrongful conviction cases. Within a week, the story broke. Financial consultant framed by criminal organization read the headlines, complete with timeline breakdowns showing the impossibility of David Bart's guilt. Lara watched the coverage from Min-Jae's office, her emotions a complicated tangle of vindication and grief. Her father's name was being restored, but he wasn't alive to see it. The federal prosecutor is recommending a full exoneration, Min-Jae said, reading an email on his phone. Your father's conviction will be overturned posthumously. It's as close to justice as the system allows. It's not enough, Lara said quietly. It never is, Min-Jae agreed. But it's something. It's truth on the record, which is more than most people get. She turned to face him, this man who'd somehow become something between an ally and an enigma. You didn't have to do this. You could have buried the evidence, protected your organization from scrutiny. I could have, he acknowledged. But I didn't. Make of that what you will. Why? Min-Jae set down his phone, giving her his full attention. Because you were right. About Ji-hoon, about the conspiracy, about the fact that innocent people became collateral damage. And because he paused, something uncertain crossing his features, because you made me remember what it feels like to care about truth more than convenience. The admission hung between them, vulnerable and unexpected. I'm leaving, Lara said, the words emerging before she'd consciously decided to speak them. Seoul, the organization, all of it. My father's name is cleared, Ji-hoon is gone, there's nothing keeping me here. Something flickered in Min-Jae's eyes, disappointment maybe, or respect. When? End of the week. I'll tie up loose ends, finish the translation work I committed to. Then I'm going back to the States. To do what? I don't know yet, she admitted. Figure out who I am when I'm not planning revenge. Maybe that's someone better. You'll be wasted in a normal life, Min-Jae said. You have skills, instincts that most people never develop. You could build something here, become part of something larger than individual justice. You mean become part of your world? I mean become my partner, he said bluntly. Not an employee, not an asset. An equal. You've proven you can navigate this life, that you're clever enough to survive and ruthless enough to win. That's rare. Lara felt the pull of his offer, the temptation of power and purpose. But she also felt the weight of what it would cost. I'd have to become someone I don't want to be, she said. Someone who sees people as chess pieces, who calculates every relationship in terms of utility and risk. You live that way because you have to. I'd be choosing it, and I don't think I can live with that choice. You're already someone who calculated revenge for 3 years, who inserted herself into a criminal organization, who helped orchestrate a man's death, Min-Jae pointed out. The person you're afraid of becoming, you already are. The only question is whether you own it or run from it. The words hit like a physical blow because they were true. She had changed, become harder and more calculating. The woman who'd arrived in Seoul 2 years ago wouldn't recognize the woman she'd become. Maybe, Lara said. But I can still choose not to go further down that road. I can stop here, with this one purpose accomplished, and try to find my way back to something resembling normal. And if normal is a lie you tell yourself? If this, he gestured between them, is who you actually are. She met his eyes, seeing the challenge and the offer, and something that might have been longing buried underneath both. Then I'll figure that out somewhere else, she said gently. Away from the person who makes me want to be dangerous. Min-Jae's expression shifted, recognition of what she wasn't quite saying. Lara. You know I'm right, she said. We're too similar, too willing to justify terrible things for the right reasons. If I stay, I'll become someone who forgets where the line is. And I need there to be a line, Min-Jae. I need to believe some things are still wrong even when they're useful. For a long moment he just looked at her, and she wondered what he saw. Then he nodded slowly, acceptance settling over his features like armor. I won't argue, he said. You deserve the chance to choose a different life. But Lara, if you ever need anything, resources, protection, a place to disappear, you contact me. What we did together, the alliance we built, that doesn't expire just because you leave Seoul. Is that sentiment or strategy? His smile was sad and genuine. With me, it's always both. But this time, it's more of the former than you might think. She stood, moving around the desk to where he sat. On impulse, she bent and kissed his cheek, brief and chaste, a goodbye that held acknowledgement of what they'd survived together. Thank you, she said quietly. For believing me when you had every reason not to. For choosing truth even when it cost you. For being better than I thought you were. Min-Jae caught her hand as she pulled away, his grip gentle but firm. And thank you for reminding me that better is still possible. Even in this life. They stayed like that for a moment, connected by history and choice and the strange intimacy of shared violence. Then Lara pulled away, walking toward the door and the future she was choosing. Lara, Min-Jae called when her hand touched the doorknob. She looked back. If you change your mind, he said, if normal doesn't fit anymore, you know where to find me. I do, she agreed. But I won't be back. Some stories are supposed to end. Time will tell if this is. I know, Lara said. That's why I have to go. She left before he could respond, walking out of his office and his building and his world with the strange lightness of someone who'd accomplished the impossible and survived to tell about it. 3 weeks later, she was back in Boston, settling into an apartment that felt both familiar and alien. Her father's exoneration was complete, his name cleared in official records and public consciousness. The media had moved on to other scandals, other stories of corruption and redemption. She'd done what she set out to do. Proven the truth, destroyed the guilty party, restored her father's reputation. And she'd walked away from the most dangerous, compelling person she'd ever met. Some nights she wondered if she'd made the right choice. If normal life was actually what she wanted, or just what she thought she should want. If the carefully constructed distance from Min-Jae's world would hold, or if she'd eventually find herself pulled back into the orbit of calculated violence and strategic survival. But for now, she was free. Free from revenge, free from Seoul, free from the gravitational pull of a man who saw the world as a game to be won and still somehow made her want to play. Her phone buzzed one evening 6 weeks after she'd left Korea. A message from an unknown number, just 3 words. Offer still stands. She stared at the text for a long time, thumb hovering over the reply button. In the end, she deleted it without responding. Some doors were better left closed, even when part of you wanted to walk back through them. Especially then. Thanks for watching.